Today is the 26th of February, and it is Friday. After this recording, I gotta go give myself some tea. um, I feel, I don't know, I had to talk about some decently triggering stuff in therapy, and I feel very uncomfortable, but I'm not depressed, but I am upset, and that's weird. Um, I've been having dysphoria issues. I've been having a lot of frustration with the name change stuff. The paralegal services didn't message me for so long that I finally messaged them and said, "Is there anything I can be doing to be proactive about the name change?" And they were like, "Oh, well, we're reviewing whether we should even take your case. I mean, your birth certificate's not even on file." And I was like, first of all, what a rude answer. Second of all, no one's communicated with me at all. And I was just so frustrated by that. But I didn't respond right away or anything. And when I did respond, I just said, "Well, that's what I meant when I emailed you. What can I do to get it on file? And is that the only document you need?" And they haven't responded to me for like 2 days now. So I thought maybe I would be like fighting with my scanner trying to get it to work or something. And instead, I'm just struggling with stuff. The majority of kids who are born intersex have a surgery done to them when they're a baby to basically cut down their clit. And I've always had not rightness down there, and I don't know if maybe that was done to me, and I don't know how to find out. And I don't know if that means that when I go to have surgery someday, if that means I won't have enough nerves or something to make a functional member, which is a very, very upsetting thing to even consider as a possibility. And the way that I was born, I have no idea if there's any like medical records or things like that and stuff. My father wasn't in the room the entire time when I was born. Only my birth mother was. I'm not talking to her about it. I don't need to be screamed at right now. I already feel shitty enough. I thought about trying to ask my father at least if he knows somewhere where I could investigate that kind of records and stuff, but he's so uncomfortable. And the last 2 times we talked, I could tell he was trying. He was kind of failing, but at least he was trying, and that's more than I can say for before that. So I don't really want to rock that boat when things are so delicate there. I don't know if it actually matters. I mean, if the reason that things are weird down there is because there was something cut and then that's why I'm having trouble with bottom growth and all of that stuff. I mean, there's nothing to be done about it now. And I don't know how I would know that. Most parents never, ever, ever talk to their kids about it when they're born intersex and they grow up and they have hormone complications and they have psychological issues, they just never tell their kid. And even when they watch their kids suffer, they still, even when they're an adult, they still just, they never ever talk to them. And a lot of intersex people actually find out about stuff not because of their parents being helpful, but because their doctors are like, this is strange, it's a recurring issue, could this be a reason? And then things start to click and make sense and fall into place, and the doctors are the ones who help the intersex person, not their family. And that's actually unfortunately very common. And it's so funny because I see a lot of conservative vomit because of who I'm related to, being almost all conservatives. And something you see a lot, is this soapbox they like to stand on, ranting about how trans children should not have any options offered to them, that it is damaging and scarring to offer, hormone blockers just to delay puberty. Oh, their brain's not developed enough for them to actually make that kind of a choice. You shouldn't be trying to force a gender on them just because they think they're one gender. They'll change their mind once they have full mental function. Blah, 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 blah. And yet, you never see anything from conservatives about how wrong or terrible it is, how absolutely damaging it is for an intersex child to have no choice in the matter and something be done to them. And it happens all the freaking time. And it's conservative parents who are the number one ones who do it. And it's so hypocritical because they're so against trans issues, but they're literally forcing a gender on their child. And a lot of intersex kids grow up and don't understand why they don't look like the gender that they feel like they are. And turns out that they actually were, but their parent did a surgery on them to try to force them to be the child that they had wished for. And some parents don't do it in a mean way. Some parents, the doctor says, oh, there's a slight deformity with your child. We need to take him in the next room and take care of it. And the parent doesn't really fully comprehend what's happening. And that does happen. And, I feel bad for those parents because some of them someday might tell their kid or regret what happened. But that's not the majority of the parents that are doing this. The majority of them are so afraid of otherness that they will force a gender on their kid when their kid's a baby or a toddler. Or some of them, some intersex kids, you can't tell they're intersex till they're a teenager, and then they force it on their teenager. And it's like, you're so adamant about trans issues and that kids shouldn't be offered hormones or hormone blockers, shouldn't be offered the ability to express the gender that they feel they are, shouldn't be allowed to have that kind of an option, and certainly never surgery. And yet you're forcing it on all the intersex kids, and you don't think that's wrong in any way, shape, or form. I keep seeing all these conservative things, and especially in the freaking government, they just had to do the hearings for that poor woman from Pennsylvania who happens to be a transgender woman, and freaking Rand Paul just spewing vomit of nonsense. And they like to say, oh, it's science, there's only two genders, when scientifically that is so wrong. They're like, oh, that chromosome thing, you seem to have forgotten it. There's 6 different sequences of chromosomes. Like, they're so like, oh, your science says there's only 2 genders, and it's like, no, actually, science does not say that. You're full of crap. Science specifically doesn't say that. It's so funny to me that freaking lady who's a horrifyingly terrible human being, that green lady, posted a sign about, trans stuff, specifically trying to be mean to another uh, person at her workplace's daughter. You can hate the house and you can hate the representatives all you want, but in reality it's a workplace. And she literally posted a sign in her workplace to condemn another employee's daughter. That would be a fireable offense at any workplace. And she just gets away with it because whatever. And she's like so full of pure conspiracy nonsense. But whatever. And it's beyond me why she's not fired. It's just absolutely beyond me. But even besides that, her little sign said, "Oh, it's science," in quotations. And the thing is, that's so funny, is they're so against science. Science, they like to pick and choose what they think science says. They think science says there's two genders, which it does not, but they like to say that it does. And it's so hilarious because science also says there's climate change. Oh, but that's a hoax. Okay. What about vaccinations? Oh no, vaccinations. Oh no, they're evil. That's Bill Gates trying to microchip you. And okay, science also says no, 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 no. Stop talking. I don't want to hear your next lie. I was just gonna say melatonin in the skin. Oh, now you're accusing me of being a racist. Well, you could be racist against white people. It's like, breathe. Do you hear yourself? Because you don't sound sane. You don't sound logical. You don't sound rational. You don't even sound calm. You definitely don't sound like you're educated on science. So don't say that it's science when you're spewing these theories of yours. We'll call them theories. Because it's not science that's saying that. It's you that's saying that. Um, it's just so stupid. It's beyond me, and it's so hypocritical. They're like, "Oh, protect the unborn babies, protect the children from these trans predators," but you don't want to protect the intersex kids. So, and it's just like so hypocritical. You just pick and choose what you care about. You don't actually care like across the board. You only care about certain specific situations. You can't tell me you care about kids and still be okay with what happens at the border when people who have children try to immigrate. Automatically, I know whether you care about kids or not. Like, if you're pro a baby who is born and they're between sexes, they're not fully boy, not fully girl, and you are for that being forced on the kid by the doctors and the parents, and the kid has no say ever in their entire life about it until they're super old and it's too late and they never knew and they're horrified at the repercussions they've dealt with their entire life. um I know automatically how much you actually care about kids. And the thing is my hormone imbalance, it is entirely possible that it could have been caused by something like this. Now, the thing is I have no proof. I don't know. I could be just searching for answers, and this isn't any of it actually true in application to me personally. But when you do these horrible, unnecessary cosmetic surgeries on your babies and your children, which is what it is, the doctors like to act like there's no repercussion, like there's nothing that happens. But the kids that happens to not only have psychological damage, but they also are hormone deficient for the rest of their life. And many of them have to go on hormones for the rest of their life because they can't produce them correctly because you messed with their sex organs. Um, Just crazy to me that they act like it's no big deal for them to go snip snip on your baby. And in reality, they grow up and they're just having horrible, horrible repercussions. It is very normal that if a kid does have any of these kinds of surgeries done to them, that they end up with hormone issues as they grow up, as a result. And sometimes the hormone issues are simply, medically based for another reason, and they're intersex for a different reason. But when the surgery is done, that is a common repercussion. And it's not that my hormone issues necessarily have to have been because of the surgery. It could be from one of the other medically accepted, reasons, and I would just be medically intersex because of that. But most people in general think of intersex as having multiple sex organs, even though the technical medical definition is actually inclusive of hormones and chromosomes being different, even if you don't physically present multiple sex organs. It's interesting to me that you can't actually get rid of the gender that the kid actually is. You do the surgery to them, they grow up super messed up, and then they find out their gender at some point in their life, hopefully. Some of them just go through their whole life miserable and don't understand. But then you're just the terrible person who tried to rob them of the life that they should have had. You're the terrible parent who destroyed your kid's life because you were too uncomfortable with otherness to think otherwise. And again, I'm not saying that to parents who genuinely had no clue. And when the doctor said, "Oh, there's something wrong with your baby, I'm going to go fix it if I have your consent," and they didn't understand what they were consenting to. I'm not talking about those parents. What's really sad is people are so obsessed with genitalia. They don't care what kind of person you are or what kind of character you have. They don't care about, your qualifications, how educated or, what sort of degrees you have. They just care about your genitalia and whether or not you fit into this bracket or that bracket. And there are people who just don't for whatever reason. And sometimes they grow into fitting into a bracket and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they start out in a bracket and then they grow out of it. And society as a whole is just so messed up in that way. It's so taboo for no reason because it's completely natural. It's completely normal. It's not like it's some new thing. The new thing is to do surgeries on the kids. Before that, it was actually you didn't do surgeries on the kids. But they also, before that, had a harder time telling because they didn't have x-rays to see that the reason that this kid was was there was an internal gonad or an internal, ovary or whatever it is. That so they can see inside. So they just sort of accepted that the kid was different. But many societies in the world, I mean, pretty much every society except Western society, accepted this. And there's a third gender for many societies in the world. And that's just an accepted thing because some kids are just born that way. We're so backwards in our own society. Like, all the conservatives just want to sweep the whole intersex issue completely under the rug and not even discuss it. And in reality, the intersex issue points toward trans rights, like, a lot. And the conservative, you know, I don't even want to call them Christian because they're definitely not following Christ. They're they're so completely against what is natural in the natural world. And it's so frustrating. And they act like it's impossible for a toddler to understand that there could be someone who's a third gender, or understand that there could be someone who hasn't grown into a gender yet. And I don't find that impossible at all. Having worked with children, like, for decades of my life, that's not at all impossible or awkward or disturbing. The only thing disturbing about it is you freaking out about it. It's actually a very calm, simple thing, and they accept it, like, almost instantaneously. Um, it makes sense because it does make sense because it's scientific. I mean, it it's just mind blowing to me. I don't know the ways that I was born different. I wasn't cognizant when I was a baby. I didn't have the brain functionality to take in everything that was happening when I popped out of the womb. I don't know. But I do know I'm living with repercussions now from not being accepted since I was a baby. And part of that was ignorance. And I forgive the ignorance. I really do. Like, flat out, there's a lot of things that we didn't know and that hadn't been studied and that hadn't been, progressed scientifically or medically or just an understanding, period. And I accept that. But there are parts of the non acceptance that were just purely bigoted and willful and intentional. And that part is harder to forgive because I am still dealing with repercussions to this day. My parents almost never took me to the doctor. Part of that was poverty, and part of that was my birth mother thinks doctors are quacks and has decided that just kind of across the board. And that was detrimental. I was not allowed to express myself. And part of that was ignorance and wanting me to be able to fit in and make friends. And part of that was just disgusting. Do I think that if a doctor offered my birth mother, while my father wasn't in the room, a surgery, or maybe even he did when my father was in the room, but it wouldn't surprise me if my father wasn't there, and that she took them up on it at some time between when I was born and maybe like 4 or 5 years old, and did that. I could absolutely believe that. My mother was kind of obsessed with trying to make me be the perfect girl or whatever. And she has apologized some for expecting perfection now that I'm an adult, because she said she felt very pressured. But at the same time, I was the kid, and she was a kid having kids, which was a bad decision. But still, I was the actual kid, and I was more mature than her. And that's difficult. It's difficult to know that she absolutely would have done that. Not because she trusted the doctors, but because she wanted perfection. But I don't know how I could find that out. I genuinely, I mean, I don't even know if medical records from that far back would have been kept or put into a digital expression at this point. Who, who knows if they ever put them in computers? I mean, seriously, it's. My mother's a complete denialist, conspiracy theorist, ranter, and my father is so uncomfortable he can barely speak. I mean, I'm not getting answers there. I don't know. The zits are getting a little worse. I asked my mom, not my mother, my mom, what she used to rub on us when we were teenagers. That helped a lot. Um, so I might ask my doctor for that when I see my doctor, but that's not till next month. And then I'll get my labs done and we'll see how my testosterone's doing, if I need to up it or if it's good where it's at, all that kind of stuff. I I don't know what's gonna happen with the name change thing. I don't know. I don't know how far the whole intersex thing goes or how much there is to know. I don't know how much it'll affect fully transitioning or not. I don't know. Those are all things that have to be found out over time. And in the meantime, I just sort of have to deal with the dysphoria and the thinking about triggering things and being uncomfortable. But at least I'm not depressed. I'm sad and I'm hurt and I grieve about it. Definitely. I'm a little angry, a little afraid, but not depressed. So that's something. It's already a hard thing. It doesn't need to be harder. But yeah. It's hard being part of a family that completely doesn't accept anything about you. It's made it difficult for me in the past, and it just keeps making things difficult. Not being able to access medical information or legal information is just something that is part of not being able to talk to both of your parents. Um, like my marriage certificate information, when I went to get married, they wanted to know like the birthplace of my birth mother and all of her birth, her birth parents and grandparents and stuff, so they could track the lineage. And I'm just like, I know my grandmother's name, I know my grandfather's last name, couldn't tell you where my birth mother was born. And they were like, well, just ask. And I was like, I can't. And they were like, oh, well, this happens sometimes. Maybe a parent's passed away, or a parent gave you up for adoption, or a parent is estranged because of abuse or whatever. Um, so we just ask people to make a guess. And it doesn't have to be perfect if you can even remember, you know, anything about it at all. So I guess the state. Um, and, it's frustrating. It comes up, you know, it comes up. Um, Sometimes I've been able to ask my aunt some stuff, but yeah, I'm not sure what will happen when she passes away. But this isn't something I can ask my aunt, so that's unfortunate. Anyway, that's where my mind's at. I'm gonna go take my testosterone. That'll make me feel a little better.